Hi, I'm Lee Stone, and this is your MaxiForex Week in Review. Let's begin with a look at last week's risers and fallers. Once again, the Euro-US dollar pair was seen under pressure. The pair lost the momentum it held earlier in the week and closed Friday down 0.17%. It was last trading at 135.85. The British pound performed well this week against the greenback, making a rise of 1.5%. The pair closed at 160.97. After 3 consecutive weeks of bad performances for the dollar-yen pair, we saw a rise of 0.09% this week. The pair was last seen trading at 82.18. The Canadian dollar-US dollar pair had a tough time this week. The pair fell 1.28% and was last trading at 0.9881. In commodities news, gold had a good week after poor performances for the past 4 weeks. Gold ended up gaining 1.01% and closed at $1,349 per ounce. This week, crude oil crossed $92 per barrel, but after the U.S. jobs report was released, mixed sentiments among investors were seen, which made crude oil fluctuate. In the end, March crude orders still managed to gain 1.5% on the week and were last trading at $89.14 per barrel. In the news this week, the stock markets in Egypt remain closed along with the banking system in the midst of anti-government protests that have dropped the Egyptian pound to 5.8585 against the dollar. This is the weakest level since January 2005. The Suez Canal, which carries around 8% of global maritime trade, is operating normally according to Egyptian authorities, and the Israeli shekel also dropped to 0.3% to 3.7196 on the dollar. In the U.S., non-farm payrolls were released, and the results were disappointing. Figures came out at 36,000 jobs versus 150,000 that were expected. This was the smallest gain in the last 4 months and far below December's rise of 121,000, which is actually higher than was initially reported. In a speech in Washington, Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke said that the U.S. needs to see faster job growth in an adequate period of time before policymakers can be assured that the economic recovery has taken hold. Last week, the U.S. unemployment rate for January was also released and showed an unexpected drop to 9% from 9.4% in December. This is the lowest level in 21 months, and it appears that this year more stress will be made on private hiring. We are also hearing that President Barack Obama is putting more emphasis on job-creating public investments in education, technology, and infrastructure as he prepares to send his budget to Congress. It's worth noting, however, that he's being hemmed by a budget deficit that's forecast to widen to a record $1.5 trillion. The euro dropped by nearly 0.2% against the dollar during the week. At the same time, the European Union leaders were meeting in Brussels to try to minimize differences they've had on ending the region's debt crisis. Mary Nicola, the currency strategist at BNP Paribas SA in New York, said that while the focus shifted to the unemployment rate instead of headline non-farm payrolls, the euro-dollar was seen to fall even further. She also mentioned that risk appetite will be tough to decide as events in Egypt remain unfolding. In China, it is expected that China's yuan could rise more quickly. Treasury Secretary Timothy Geithner has been trying to prompt China into letting the yuan, also known as the renminbi, rise more swiftly, something that is seen as vital for rebalancing global growth. A higher valued yuan would make imports cheaper for Chinese consumers and encourage Beijing to seek more growth through domestic consumption rather than through exports. Other countries, including Brazil, have expressed unhappiness at the impact on their domestic industries by the cheap Chinese imports. With the Group of 20 meeting in Paris later this month, Geithner is visiting Brazil on Monday and has a chance to seek an ally for making the case that China should speed up yuan appreciation. In a Treasury Department report to Congress on Friday, the argument was made that China should follow through on President Hu Jintao's commitments to allow more exchange rate flexibility and boost domestic demand. Well, that's all the time we have for this week. Until next time, be sure to visit us at MaxiForex.ru.